Welcome back, everyone, to the WCS Premier League, where we're in Group B right now of the round of 32. Still quite a few spots remaining for the round of 16 out in Poland later in September. But so far, we've had one match. Of course, Roddy joining us on the desk now to talk about what's coming up next. Next up, after Elfie has his first win in the group, is going to be Hydra versus Kelazhur. Most would say, I'm not even going to put a number on it, right? Hydra, highly favored in this matchup. But, I mean, is there any chance that we're going to see, or what does it take for Kelazhur to take this? I mean, because Hydra, we were talking earlier, like his macro, micro, everything's top-notch.
I mean, there's always a chance. Nobody ever thought that Moro was going to defeat Hydra in WCS Season 1 in the round of 32, and he did it. And, you know, Hydra, over the last few months, he has dropped once or twice a series against non-Korean. So there is a little bit of hope, but we're not fooling anyone when we say, you know, like, obviously Hydra is a massive favorite. Like, that's just the way it is. He's the reigning champion of WCS. You won't be a reigning champion without being extremely good. And also, you know, Kelazhur, just to put things in perspective, reigning champ goes up against a player that hasn't made it to the round of 16 once yet in his career. So you know.
Statistically speaking, it is really a battle of like the tight. It's one of the more classic comparisons we can have is that Hydra sitting at the very top. But literally, he is the reigning champion, as you mentioned. He also did perform really well during the Season 2 finals. I mean, the way he played, right? It's not simply that he got through, like barely scrapped through. Everyone was talking about Little Bow. He's going to be, you know, he's probably the best player right now outside of Korea, and then Hydra comes through. He's like, yeah, but I'm still here, guys. Don't worry. I'm going to take this win. Goes through. Chris, what are we looking for here from Hydra? I mean, how are we going to assess him in this Group B if he's just such a huge favorite?
It's going to be weird because both players are teammates. That's the biggest thing. They do practice against each other. They're friends. I would expect Hydra to play safe, normal macro. At any point where you feel like you're the better player, that's generally the way you want to go. And then Kelazhur is going to, of course, want to mix it up a little bit, do something unusual. And that's going to come into play just because they play so much together. You know, he feels confident in his abilities. He knows that if it goes into anything normal, he should come out ahead. And Kelazhur is going to, you know, have to do something.
Yeah, we'll, of course, take a closer look. I mean, maybe depending on, maybe Kelazhur tries to throw something, a little wrench in the map selections or whatnot. I mean, you're going to have to pull something out as a wild card here. And I don't think there's much to lose for Kelazhur to try that, right? It's the very first match of the group. Most people, probably including yourself and Hydra, are saying that the result is probably going to be Hydra favored. So why not go a little bit crazy very first match of the group? Not much to lose. You
know, Chris, I'm wondering as well, I kind of want to ask you, if you're Kelazhur right now, you're going into this series, I would even be more motivated to do something very weird and very unorthodox because, you know, if you lose, which is kind of likely, you go up against another Zerg, and do you really want to reveal like your best build against someone like Hydra? And then the other guys watching is like, well, you know, even if you use your best build, there's still a really good chance Hydra is going to win. And then you just kind of revealed your playstyle.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking about. And I do think that, but on top of that, Starbuck's a player that does really cheesy things. We saw him in his up-down matches against Bunny. He did go for a lot of roach all-ins, so maybe Kelazhur's thinking, you know what, it's probably not going to be that normal anyways.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but if I was him, I would definitely do something a little crazy against Hydra.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, as you guys just mentioned, Kelazhur. It's like you don't want to show your best styles, but at the same time, are you really expected to play the same game against Hydra as you would against Starbuck? It's an iffy situation for him to think about it that way.
And of course, you know, we're all competitors, and nobody goes into a series. Doesn't matter who your opponent is, whether it's Flash, Jadon, Hydra, SOS, Hero. Like, you go in with the best intentions. You do want to win.
Yes.
But there's also the bigger picture you have to think about. So it's really kind of, you know, what is the right thing to do over here? Of course, I want to put on a good show. I'm not just going to go down 0-2, you know, I'm not going to wave the white flag right now.
Yeah.
I do want to do my best, but there is that bigger picture to think about. So it's very hard, actually, to make the correct call.
Yeah, I feel like for the other three players right now, they're just thinking, I want to get second place. You know, they're not looking at it and being like, all right, first place, we're locking it in right now today, boys. I think they're thinking, you know, we're going to do our best. If I got to play Hydra, you know, cool. If I beat him, that's amazing, you know. But at the same time, even if he beat Hydra, he's going to play Elfie. And if he loses, he's going to play Starbuck.
Yeah.
When I look at those two players, it's kind of like about the same skill level regardless. So, you know, I think he's realistically just looking at the whole picture and thinking, I'll do what I can.
Yeah, and again, this isn't about, you know, how Kelazhur is taking the group or the tournament as a whole, but it's really just respect to Hydra. It's the fact that, listen, it'd be great to beat him. Maybe I'll try some crazy things, but I'm not going to put in 100% of my preparation there as we take a look at the map picks. What do you guys think? Cactus and Kodo, of course, pretty standard. Iron Fortress coming in as the last map after all the vetoes.
You know, I would say on a big map like Cactus Valley, knowing how Starbuck plays as well, you know, if I'm Kelazhur, I wouldn't maybe mind a double factory blue flame opening.
Yes.
You know, do something out of the box like that you wouldn't really do against someone who's likely to make a bunch of roaches against you. But against Hydra, it was like, well, you know, if I play Super Stand, that is going to be very rough. Maybe try to catch him off guard and get a ridiculous amount of drone kills. Of course, if Kelazhur is somehow able to take game number 1, then we have a very interesting series on our hands, because then Kelazhur is like, all right, you know, this is my shot right now. I have to win one out of the next 2 maps, and if I do that, I go up against Alfie. Alfie didn't look extremely convincing in his PvT when he played against Uthermal.
Yep.
So, you know, if Kelazhur is able to take the first map off the back of something crazy, then we're looking at a very interesting series. And then obviously this entire group is suddenly on its head.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, you're nodding your head in agreement here. Do you agree? You kind of have to try that in that first map for Cactus.
Yeah, whenever you get into this situation as a pro player, whether it's a best of 5, best of 7, best of 3, when you get to that match point, anybody can lose 1 game.
That's true. Yeah,
when you go into a best of 3 or a best of 5, you got 2 maps left, you feel okay, but last map, it's hectic.
All right, well, we'll see how Kelazhur takes this one. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it's hugely in favor of Hydra, but if Kelazhur can pull something off here, it would be a miracle everyone's going to be talking about for the rest of the Premier League. Match number 2 of Group B coming right now.
The war machine continues to turn as Hydra prepares to move to the round of 16 for the 3rd time this year. Kelazhur, the steamroller is in front of him, getting out of the way. There's nowhere to run. He has to somehow overcome this monster in front of him.
And, you know, this is a place any foreigner StarCraft 2 player has been in before. So while it is certainly true, and we do think Hydra is probably the best player in this WCS tournament, of all the 32 guys, Kelazhur, he's been here before, man, especially as a foreigner, kind of up and coming. He's 22 years young. The guy he's fresh-faced and baby, and he's just ready to go. And while no one expects him to win this match, in many ways, the Batman movies have taught me that makes him the most dangerous at this time.
Exactly. Hopefully seeing some craziness brought out as he takes on the Titan of WCS right now, Hydra, you know, his teammate, who's basically just been kicking everyone's ass all year long.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because it was season 1 where everyone's like, you know, they almost say Hydra won that one as well, and it's because he almost did. He took 2nd place.
There are some people that, you know, the season 1 map pool was also, you know, considered to be a very heavy influence. You know, Secret Springs, you put the last game on arguably the most heavily Terran favored map, statistically speaking, and that's you know, you're hard pressed to take a victory, is that even if you are as good as Hydra. Now, what I'm mostly curious about is I want to see Kelazhur do something crazy. People talk about strategies, talk about options. If you are this unfavored, I think Kelazhur can play a great bio game. You know, he's played a lot of good ones. He played versus Hydra, played straight up bio last season. Obviously, he lost because Hydra's, you know, the best player basically in WCS. But you know, maybe he can take something from the Koreans that have been dominating with mech recently, try to find something that he can abuse, because honestly, that's the only way he's going to come out on top here.
You know, it's interesting. So to play a little bit devil's advocate, and just to establish this, I don't necessarily disagree with you. Like, going into this, he knew who he was facing first. He had time to prepare. I do think you should shake it up. I absolutely do think when you can objectively be like, okay, that guy's a lot better than me. He's just got better results. He's faster. He's, you know, he trains with top-tier players. Like, I know he's better than me. So if I play a completely straight-up game with him, StarCraft is a beautiful, well-balanced game where more often than not, you're going to come out behind. So in that situation, yes. But that being said, having been a former pro gamer myself, I can tell you that if your play style is straight up and you're playing someone that is better than you, you still kind of have to go with your strengths. Like, you can do little things different, but everyone's like, 2 Rex, you know, and like Mega Cheese, 4-port Banshee. Like, again, those things could work, absolutely. But if that's not your forte, if that's not where you're strong, like, really reinventing yourself can lead to even more embarrassing losses. And a lot of times we have seen these giants toppled, not necessarily by ultimate cheesy play from the underdog, but because they did what they thought was their strongest play style, and a couple of things aligned, and all of a sudden they're ahead.
Yeah, I guess it does come down to if you want to at least show a good game. I think Kelazhur is the stronger of the other 2 players outside in this match, and I would say that if he were to somehow win this, I would favor him to go out of the group in first place. And if he drops this, I'm still expecting to see him in the decider match and then potentially moving on with his teammate either way. But it's still...
But it's going to be tougher, Nathan.
Yeah,
like
your life is on the line once you drop this series.
And that's what makes this draw so perilous for them. Like, I do agree with you. I think Kelazhur is the other one that is probably the favorite. behind Hydra, a distant favorite behind Hydra. But because he's most likely going to take a loss here against this Juggernaut, all of a sudden he's facing an Elfie that's looking better than people thought. Well, I mean, that's assuming the rest of it goes. He's actually going to face Starbuck next. Starbuck did not look as good, but Starbuck is a dangerous Roach player all-inner in ZvT.
I was going to say, I also think, you're going to get a very different look from a player like Starbuck compared to someone like Hydra, who Hydra really has no reason to do anything all-in-ish or super aggressive, because if he does that, he's basically saying, Kelazhur, if you defend this push, you're ahead, and now I actually have a chance of being upset. There's no reason for him to do that. You play your safe game, play your A game, don't take any unnecessary risks, out-macro your opponent, and beat him because you're better than him.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see where he lands. So far, it has been fairly straight up. Just some Hellions moving out here. And Hydra, guys, if you haven't seen, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are hardcore StarCraft fans, but if you're just joining us as, I got to check this out. This WCS thing seems pretty great. Watch Hydra. It's a thing of beauty. He's just so rock solid, and he doesn't take huge risks. His mechanics are very, very sharp. He's also really aggressive, but not like in a, I'm a caster, so when I say aggressive, I'm trying to politely say he's a cheeser kind of way, but more of a like, he actually will just be in your face attacking all the time. Great
map presence with these Zerglings, actually. Catching the reinforcing Hellions, and when you're a Terran trying to control all of them at once, it's very difficult. You lose your map control. If Hydra really wanted to, he could actually just send all these Zerglings to Kelazhur's base right now as this Baneling Nest finishes and just bust the natural and run in and try to kill something. Because there's very little barracks production. There's a couple of barracks on the way, but there's just that one Hellion and a handful of Marines. Like, you can't build anything out of any of these racks yet.
You can see all the production that is ramping up here, so in time, that lack of production will be remedied with a tremendous amount of production. Those Zerglings are going to poke at the front of the wall. They're checking it out. Backing away, and again, kind of to your point, I don't disagree with you. Yeah, you could Baneling bust this and run it with Zerglings, but that's not really the Hydra kind of way, because if that gets defended, all of a sudden he's like, wait a second.
I mean, I've seen players like Jaedong be a little more, likely to make, they pounce on moves like this, because if you play enough games, someone like Hydra plays more than enough StarCraft to know that it's like, okay, you invest in those early Hellions, sure, you're going to follow up with Stim, probably engineering bays. You don't have a lot of Marines, and that's why as a Terran player, you want to keep those Hellions on the map. You don't want to lose them, not just because you want to do damage, but now he can't really scout that effectively. He can't delay the creep spread, and that just opens up. It opens up so much more for Hydra to do whatever he wants to do.
We already saw there was 3 queens spreading that creep, and if you look at the minimap, I mean, look no further. It's just like, it's already going to be a problem. And the fact that they got kind of quote-unquote close spawns on this 4-player map means that in no time at all, we're just now approaching 10 minutes. It's going to be roughly like 12, 13-minute area, where without those Hellions, that creep's pushing up in the other 3rd base, now 4th base option for the Terran players. It's like there's going to be a creep highway directly to the Terran, and that's about the time when Mutos will be joining up with those Ling Banelings that are enjoying a 1-1 upgrade just in a couple seconds here, and all of a sudden, Kelazhur is in a terrible spot. Just a terrible spot.
Yeah. These Zerglings and Banelings are going to try to hit this 3rd. These Marines get surrounded. There's the Stim, but no medevac support, no combat shield, and these Banelings trying to put themselves in between the 3rd and natural so that they can run back and help knock this down. These SCVs get smashed. 10 workers immediately falling, and these Marines Stim twice. They have no hit points. Hydra just completely swarms the natural.
He's trashing the 3rd. He just got the entire army, and as you said, it's before these medevacs come out, but they have nothing to heal. They're like, guys, we're here. What do we do? There's no Marines. They're not even a drop here. And it actually kind of fool. Oh, he's trying to save the SCVs.
Run, you fools!
Yeah, there's nowhere to run for them. So many losses already racked up, and if you can see, it's a 114 supply for Hydra versus just the 76 for Terran. It's not uncommon for around this time for Terran to have a supply advantage.
It's almost silly because, I revere Kelazhur as a player to look up to and study, but Hydra is just this good, he makes him look silly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he, as you said kind of earlier, and you kind of touched on this, like some of these players jump on moments of opportunity. Jaedong, a lot more aggressive, so he'll jump a little bit earlier, but there's higher risk there. Hydra, he knew, hey, if you're going to try to land that 3rd after losing all of your Hellions, you are vulnerable. I'm coming after you, and it's going to great effect. No bunker at this 3rd. More SCVs dying. They just transferred there, and it's being compounded. Kelazhur was already behind, so like we're looking at this and we're like, wow, what a mistake. To be honest, he had to do something like this, because if he's just like, wow, I lost a bunch of SCVs there, better turtle up and move out in 5 minutes, well, okay, then Hydra's at 200 supply with who knows what tech at that point in time.
And as a Terran player who's going for bio, you're behind in basically every possible way. How are you ever going to step out onto the map and clear up that creep when your opponent has enough forces on the map to just completely swallow your army and kill you?
He was looking for something. Unfortunately, he came up a little bit empty-handed. Not Hydra, though. Moving in here. A lot of Zerglings now backed up by those Mulas. And in fact, actually no Banelings. I think they're waddling around somewhere behind this. But it looks like he's just going to trade out a bunch of Zerglings for now at this point in time.
He still wins without Banelings.
Yeah, I mean, he's at 1-1 upgrades, 2-2s, about 75% done.
Such a large lead in this game. Without Banelings, he crushes through. Now he comes into the natural, busts that bunker down, and this is basically it. There's no more here for Kelazhur. All his SCVs are dying. He's losing another 10. The rest of them are just trying to run away again. Yeah. But the Mute is here, and once he gets on top of the production, that's when the bells toll for the Terran player.
Certain obese people start to sing, that kind of thing happens. But there it is. GGWP from the teammate out of Brazil. And that's a rough start. And again, it kind of, it starts to feed into a little bit of what we're talking about. We're like, okay, let's take a look at this game. And let's say to ourselves, do we think he should play straight up again in Game 2? And again, this is us speculating in, guys. So for the most part, Kelazhur, again, he's been preparing for this. He's been thinking about Hydra. They live together, so he's very familiar with this play style. I don't know. But from the outside looking in, I gotta hope, because if it's just, if he's like, well, gosh, if I don't lose that third, maybe then, and if I don't have my Hellions ran down and hunted like dogs, like it was just so bad from the beginning.
We can also look at it that, like, maybe Kelazhur is so confident and prepared so much for the other players that he kind of like says to himself, there's really no way I'm going to beat Hydra, and he's okay with this just being like a quicker series so he can just get to trying to win the other ones.
It's definitely possible. It certainly is something, but I'll tell you, like, I've been, not to do that thing too much where I'm like, at one time I was a pro gamer, but it's like I played almost all my games as the underdog, and if you go into it with the idea of like, well, I stand 0% chance, you stand 0% chance. You got to believe. You got to hope. What have all the Disney movies taught us, Nathanius? Right? All of them.
Gotta
keep
the dream alive.
But then keep the dream alive. That's the two things. Exactly. So it's like, for the most part here...
Play your teammate, but keep the dream alive.
Exactly. So, I don't know. He's got to reach into his bag, though. We are going to Coda, which is actually like the most straight-up map.
This map, if we're talking about trying to really play underhanded, I want to see Kelazhur play mech.
Yeah, it's super strong.
If Kelazhur seriously wants to win this match, whenever, at least in most of the games that I've seen, and whenever I'm playing against someone that's better than me, if I know they are,
to everybody, but
you're not. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're just not going to beat people that are better than you in a matchup where you play mechanics, and that's what Bio is all about. Mech relies so much less on that. It's more about the positioning and really just being aware. I'd honestly prefer to see that, because I don't see winning a straight up Marine Mine Medevac game against this guy. He's so good, Hydra. He's base Zerg, terror of NA.
With a charming smile, a calm, peaceful, friendly demeanor.
And I'm just not entirely sure what we need to see from our blue Terran, who's also from Root, Kelazhur. But he's still, it just feels weird because he's like, yeah, he's quite good, but the only reason that you get smashed like this is because you're playing the guy who won WCS in Season 2. He is more than a contender in this group, but Hydra will make everyone look bad.
More than a contender? What do you call him? What is that?
Well, he's I don't know, he's a heavy contender.
Ooh.
He's
heavy.
He's a contender plus.
Whatever
that term.
I like it.
He's a favorite. That's what I'd say.
All right, so let's touch on something. I like what you were talking about, and to get a little bit into the nitty-gritty. So when we talk about mech, for those of you that perhaps, again, are not super hardcore StarCraft fans, but even for you guys that are, let's talk about it. Mech, typically for Terran, describes the utilization of like tanks, Hellions, Hellbats, Thors, the mechanized stuff, the vehicles, the robots, the cool things. And on this map in particular, you'll notice there's 3 bases readily available in that little blue corner for the Terran. But there's even a 4th, and when you take that 4th, you're extending towards the middle of the map where there's ramps, there's choke spaces. This is really advantageous for that playstyle because there's so much AoE available. It's so hard for Zerg to get in there. And they used to use Swarm Hosts, but balance-wise, Swarm Hosts were problematic in other areas.
They don't really exist in this matchup.
Not as much. So it's become hard for Zerg to deal with that. And to be honest, in the metagame, it all becomes then for Zerg to say, okay, I see you adjusting towards mech. I need to get in as much damage now and early before you really get set up. Otherwise, when they get locked in, that Terran player, it's super hard to dislodge them.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that kind of mech has evolved and moved around a bit. I hadn't seen as many of the Korean matches that have been played in the last week or two where the mech has been apparently terrorizing. I had a conversation with Major about the style that he busted out yesterday in his series against Betrayus, and what he had to say about it was, the way that you can do it, the Korean style without the Ravens is just pushing with the BCs so fast that you force out the Corruptors and you like really mess with their army composition. But Hydra's the kind of guy that will probably find a way to kill you before you can reach that ultimate army. If that's what mech is. Mech is, it's about the ultimate army. We saw Major actually had a big lead with a not quite ultimate army mech, and he tried to push out on the map. He wasn't maxed out, and he got wrecked and actually allowed Patrace to come back into the game and clear the series. So it's something we have to be very patient. You really cannot ever attack until you know 100% you're going to win.
And that's the art of it. Like, a lot of people try to underrate it and talk about how it's, overpowered and easy, but to be honest, especially at this level, playing a player like Hydra, it's not as simple as making a few tanks and winning. It is infinitely more complex than that and very difficult to execute. So we talk a lot about it. Kelazhur is not necessarily known as a guy to go mech, so we'll have to, maybe this is all for naught, but we'll see. Coda, a map that is pretty typical. I think the first thing he does need to fix, though, is he had something like 8 Hellions last game.
Yeah,
literally get ran down by 20-ish Zerglings.
I'll be honest, if you're playing a ladder game or something like that, you open up, those Hellion openings are the staple. Almost every single Terran player will do it. They all have Hellion openings. Any game where you lose your first 6 Hellions or 8 Hellions, what have you,
is bad.
Honestly, if there's nothing on the line, you might as well just tap out. Like, you don't have the map control to stop your opponent from either counterattacking or taking a 4th base, spreading their creep relentlessly. They don't have to do anything defensively. Like, everything just goes really, really bad. Because the Zerg player also has the ability to write off a lot of other potential things that you could have been doing. Say, a Marine drop with Hellion Run-By, or an armory. If you were building an armory and you lose your Hellions, well, not going to have any Hellbats. So
not worried about Hellbats.
It gives the Zerg so much breathing room. You absolutely must keep those Hellions alive at the start of the game.
And immediately Hydra, by the way, does scout this trifecta of tech. We see Hellions again coming out, but also a quick starport with that tech lab. So it will be a Hellion Banshee opening, which is pretty good, pretty strong about applying pressure to that 3rd base in particular. But again, Hydra's so on top of the ball, sees it at its earliest conception. So he's going to be prepared. And we already saw that he favors the kind of 3 to 4 extra queen style. So he'll have the basis for doing something about this. We're going to have a little bit of a run-by with these Hellions. They're not, well, they can endanger drones, but one's going to die essentially for free.
The focus of this is so that
Scouting.
Kelazhur doesn't have to use a scan. He opened up with a 2 command center build. He does not have a fast 3rd base, which means he needs those mules back home to get his economy going and keep the production level up. So throwing away the 2 Hellions in that scenario, not the worst case scenario, especially considering that this could still be... okay, is he getting another tech lab on that barracks? Could still be bio, I suppose.
Wait for it.
It looked like he had the chance to go mech with that. Hellion Banshee leads very easily into mech, but...
Raven?
But
2 more barracks. And actually, I've seen this from a few players too, that early Raven's really cool. The PDD can kind of mess up a few compositions. Also gives you early scouting without... the ability detection, excuse me. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
denial is always very nice. And this Overseer comes in, it's like, oh, okay, maybe you're building another Banshee. You see the building barracks, though, and that's like, Hydra's like, okay, no mech. You can just immediately cross it off. You have to react very differently between both styles, and Hydra's a good enough player. Obviously, he didn't really have much trouble versus the bio setup that Kelazhur was going for on the previous map.
Yeah, and again, I love watching these top-tier players like Hydra. Like, he's been scouting so diligently, just the macro mechanics, and you can see it expressed in his creep spread. It's continuously just bubbling down the middle of the map. Tech path-wise, it's actually a little bit of a faster Spire for him, and you'll notice no upgrades. So he's switching it up just a little bit. This is particularly strong against a Banshee opening. Now, this one Banshee really hasn't done much. It did kill a creep tumor. It harried a queen a little bit, but no drone kills, and that's its primary function. So in a few seconds here, with these 6, more mutas coming out, that Banshee's going to have nothing to do. So again, it's a little bit of an early win for Hydra in this opening stage.
Yeah, Hydra's gotten basically everything that he could have wanted out of this. He hasn't invested crazily into the drones because he's gone for this very even setup, having a lot of lings out on the map, going for the Mutalisks reasonably quickly. But that's okay when you're this good because you're telling yourself, I don't need the massive economic advantage. All I need is just enough to deal with anything he could possibly throw at me, and then I'm going to slowly grind it out because that's the way I want to win this game. He doesn't want to go for something crazy.
It's just such a good way to play a best of 3 as well. Like, to do the same thing over and over again, you're begging to be hard countered, and that's something that in StarCraft is a huge deal. Like, if I have ultimate information on my opponent, my decision making is so much different than what it is to play with limited information, which is what most of us have to play with. So Hydra shaking up a little bit, just changing the timings, is going to once again challenge this 3rd. You'll notice there's no medevacs out just yet. Of course, it was swapped with the starport, so there will be medevacs. And not suffering the earlier losses, I do have to say our Brazilian Terran is in a lot better of a position. He's going to establish this third and really have the finances to try and stand toe-to-toe with this Zerg player.
Yeah, and he got the missile turrets up at a really nice time. He wasn't really at risk of anything. The biggest threat, wow, that Banshee just
he's playing with death, man. He's like, going down the middle of the map, boys. See you later.
Yeah.
Probably not coming home.
The creep spread, too, is also going to become an issue soon enough. It's like it's nice to have a Raven, but Ravens are also very slow. Like, as soon as the Mutas and Lynx push him back off the creep, the Raven will die. Like, the Mutas will get it very easily, or at least they should be able to.
It's definitely for creep spread denial later. It's not an early thing because you just don't have the map presence to get out there and do anything with that. Like, the only time you ever have that ability is with double medevacs earlier on.
His 1-1 is actually done now. Like, if he tried to push out onto the creep and any Lynx tried to defend the creep, he could actually do a lot. And, like, this Banshee, you know, yeah, it's going to die, but now he knows the Mutas are up there, so it says to him, okay, my medevacs can probably go to the left side. So this big drop loads up. I don't know how I feel about that since Hydra is very aware. He has a lot of map vision. I would prefer to see a concerted push into the center where he just tries to clear that creep. It's so important if you want to make that later push to hit the 4th.
I don't disagree with you, but, man, that would be bold.
Look at this Ling! Like, he's just so good. He just instantly sees it. Hydra's paying attention. He knows. He's going to send some units over to his main. The Mutas are already coming over to defend.
Yeah, but it's... What it is doing is buying for that positioning that you were talking about. Now, all of a sudden, you do have Marines in the middle of the map killing creep tumors. And I feel like he needed the drop to earn this space for that. He is going to lose all his Marines. He needs to pick off a Muta or two.
He focused down 2 of the Mutalisks. You know, he did, as you said, he created some space using the drop. Lost a lot, though. I think 1 drop could have still done that job for him.
Sure.
But at the very least, he didn't have to use scans to clean up the creep tumors, thanks to the help of that Raven. And the PDD could actually block the Mutalisk shots, too.
Oh,
he uses it.
Just stops and dies. And
yeah, well, that also
these are the kinds of mistakes that he's going to look back on and be like, well, you can't do that against Hydra. And he's going to push in here. Does Hydra. First Baneling hit is actually not very good because the Widowmine detonates all over them. So a nice little trade for Kelazhur so far. Close in supply.
He scans ahead. He wants to know if there's anything waiting for him up that ramp. And to be honest, there don't seem to be too many Banelings still on the map.
No.
But he lost the Ravens. Now he has to scan to kill the creep. And the creep will take a while to dissipate, which means pushing this 4th base can be very difficult.
He'll be fighting on creep. This 4th base is critical. If you can stay even on base with a Zerg player, you're in good spot.
If he found a way to micro his units perfectly so that he could actually kill this 4th base here, then that's what you're supposed to do. But, you know, these trades have been really back and forth, and Hydra is just so good.
Yeah, Hydra picks off that Marauder. Marauder in the front tries to grab the attention of these Banelings. Banelings actually going forward, just kind of haphazardly by themselves, so that they are the vanguard. And here comes the rest of the army going all over our Terran player's army, and it's going to bail out. Now, he did kill back a lot of creep tumors, and he didn't lose the majority of his army, but he did lose 4 or 5 Widowmines, and you kind of want to watch that count because right now, that's kind of his ace up the sleeve. That's his chance.
I almost wish he'd waited just a little bit longer. His 2-2 is done now, and now he had, just for maybe 30, 40 seconds, he'll have a bit of an upgrade advantage, and that could have actually made that engagement a lot easier for him. One of the Mutalisks eats some pavement there off that Widowmine, but Kelazhur's going to scan up here. There's no creep, sure, but does he actually have enough to stop this? I don't think so.
No, his army is
be very careful.
Small.
That drop in the top right is basically going to try to pull this whole army back, but I'm not sure if it'll be enough.
Jeez, I mean, here comes the aggression. Hydra's he's just all over this. The Marines are swinging around over here, but it's a little bit too late. Inside the natural is our Zerg player, and now even devastating the 3rd base mineral line.
Oh, those Banelings.
It's just so many losses.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying his best to split his heart out, but it's just not working. The Mutalisks on top of his production.
Now.
Yeah, and that drop does land at the 3rd base, and it's like, okay, you know, give a golf clap. It's nice, but you're losing everything back home. And this is just Hydra basically saying, okay, dotted the T's, cross the I's.
Time's up.
We're all good.
Time's up. 4 Marines and a bunch of medevacs are going to try to push this back. And okay, Hydra's going to respect it. He's going to back out, but he's backing it out to the GG. Hydra, as predicted, cleans up 2-0. And in extremely, like, that was the safest 2-0 I've seen in a while. Like,
he took
was
no
never
chances.
in danger. Never in danger.
He took no unnecessary, extraordinary chances. And we talked about it. You know, Kelazhur didn't try to throw some sort of weird, crazy build that we've never seen before.
And in retrospect, he probably should have. Something.
Would have been cool to watch, I guess. Could have been a potential highlight moment. But, you know, at the very least, Hydra doesn't have to show anything crazy. It's not like there's no other Terrans in this group that he would have to end up playing against, you know, unless by some really weird chance, Elfie upset him and then Kelazhur beat Starbuck, in which case, I don't know, we're probably not on planet Earth anymore. But, you know, all things said and done, Kelazhur still has a very good shot at getting out of this group.
He does, but his back is up against that wall. Taking that first round loss means that he is just one best of 3 away from being done with WCS, which is pretty incredible. And we've seen upsets, man. Betrayus yesterday, we were all writing him off all day. He gave the best games against Polt, probably the second best player in this WCS, and then made it out of the group, upsetting Hearthstone. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, maybe we'll have some sort of similar storyline like that. Let's hear now from Chobra and the boys at the desk.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Of course, we just watched that game, Hydra versus Kelazhur, and let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, I think in any case, in any community, you're going to have the two parties, right? Where one's going to say, well, looking back, maybe Kelazhur really should have tried something really crazy. But then we were talking about it. We preceded the game with that statement. But then while we were watching, we were like, maybe he just wants to see where he stacks up in this group and where he is leading into this Premier League. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, I personally would love to see him do something. I think him playing a normal game it's never going to work against Hydra, to be honest. But like you said, you never really know until you play that normal macro game. And if by some weird, strange way Hydra does end up losing to Elfie, I'm sure he'll change it up if he has to play him again. But as of right now, he really didn't have any huge mistakes. Even in this first game in Cactus Valley, he lost a few Hellions, got him surrounded, and then it was just Hydra attacking and him losing. It wasn't like he misplayed a drop or had horrible micro. It's just Hydra's a better player, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wanted to actually follow up with that question, is that now having played somewhat a standard game against Hydra Roddy, do you think there's anything that Kelazhur can kind of look back really quick and say, all right, this is what I'm going to take away from having played one of the best players in WCS? Or was it like, all right, Hydra's really good, that's the only conclusion we have?
There's always a few things that maybe you don't necessarily learn in this moment, but things you already know, but sometimes go in the back of your mind and then suddenly you forget about it. Like a couple of engagements, the Hellions in the first game, they were split up. When you have 2 Hellions on the right side of the links and 4 Hellions on the left side of the links, it becomes very difficult. So, note to self, keep Hellions together, makes it a lot easier. Small things like that. The only thing I'm a tiny bit worried about, but at the same time I don't think it truly matters, is that whenever you do play a very standard game like this and you do get kind of crushed, that could be hard on your confidence. It's very important that Kelazhur doesn't suddenly start doubting everything he knows about this matchup and everything he knows how he normally approaches it, because you're going up against a player that just won't do it as well as Hydra. Hydra is always going to have more units as the next guy you're going to play, so I hope it doesn't affect him too much, because this was kind of a rough series for him.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the Kelazhur. Sure, the result, and everyone was saying Hydra's highly favored, but that's because of Hydra. But Kelazhur himself, an up-and-coming player, and a lot of people are saying that, well, he has a really good shot of moving out in Group B, and everyone's interested to see how far he can go this season in the Premier League. You can't, I mean, for his fans or himself, you can't sit there and say, oh, geez, lost to Hydra 2-0. That feels really bad, because you just have to move onward and say, listen, I got here for a reason. I'm here because, and a lot of people believe that I can go further. Kelazhur should really think back on that.
No, absolutely. I think even before Alfie was replaced by Utermo, I think Kelazhur looked at this group and be like, I think that's manageable. Utermo and Kelazhur are actually great friends. I'm sure they've played a bunch of games with each other. So he probably thought, like, I have a realistic shot at making it to the round of 16. He would be the first Brazilian player ever, by the way, to make it into WCS Premier League.
True.
Round of 16. So that would be a great milestone. And, the most important thing right now is just move on from this series, forget about it, and focus on the things that truly matter. And that is that series against Starbuck. He could learn so much from that series that Bunny played. And I know the foreign Terrans, they all watch each other. They're a very united group of bunch of people as well. So the moment that happened, all the Terrans have seen those games. He knows what to expect, and he knows it's going to be a very different series. So I still believe, and, like you said, for a lot of fans, Kelazhur is the favorite to make it out of this group after Hydra. And I don't think this series changes all that much about it.
Yeah, it shouldn't really affect how you guys view the group. So let's take a look at where we are now that we've had the initial matches in Group B. As we were just mentioning, the next match coming up will be Starbuck versus Kelazhur fighting to stay in the Premier League. It is the elimination match of this group. Meanwhile, Elfie and Hydra sitting up top a little bit comfortably to see who's going to be the first seed of the group. And then moving on forward, we will also find out who takes that second spot for the round of 16. So after this break, ladies and gentlemen, we come back. Starbuck versus Kelazhur fighting for their life to stay in the Premier League. It should still be an interesting match. I mean, we talked about it before for Starbuck, and now with Kelazhur, how has he prepared to play against these other players other than Hydra? That's going to be the highlight. We'll come back right after this.